The bullet tore through Marcus Kane's shoulder 3 seconds before Dr. Isabel Cross realized she was about to fall in love with a man she was supposed to save, not want. His blood was hot on her hands, too hot, too fast, pooling beneath her gloves as the makeshift clinic shook from another explosion half a mile out. The bullet tore through Marcus Kane's shoulder 3 seconds before Dr. Isabel Cross realized she was about to fall in love with a man she was supposed to save, not want. His blood was hot on her hands, too hot, too fast, pooling beneath her gloves as the makeshift clinic shook from another explosion half a mile out. She could smell cordite mixing with antiseptic, could hear screaming in Arabic somewhere beyond the canvas walls, but all she saw were his eyes. Dark, fierce, fixed on her face like she was the last thing worth seeing on earth. "Stay with me," she commanded, her voice steadier than her pulse. She could smell cordite mixing with antiseptic, could hear screaming in Arabic somewhere beyond the canvas walls, but all she saw were his eyes. Dark, fierce, fixed on her face like she was the last thing worth seeing on earth. "Stay with me," she commanded, her voice steadier than her pulse. "Don't you dare die on this table." His lips curved, barely, painfully, into something that might have been a smile. "Bossy. For an angel." "I'm no angel." She pressed deeper into his chest cavity, fingers searching for the bleeder. "And you're no saint if you got yourself shot in a Syrian war zone. Don't you dare die on this table." His lips curved, barely, painfully, into something that might have been a smile. "Bossy. For an angel." "I'm no angel." She pressed deeper into his chest cavity, fingers searching for the bleeder. "And you're no saint if you got yourself shot in a Syrian war zone. Time =sign 0.6s. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Thank you so much for choosing this story today. I know there are a million things you could be doing on the internet right now, but you're here, and that means everything. So tell me, how's your day going? Good? Chaotic? Somewhere in between? Either way, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned, because I've got daily romance stories coming that are going to absolutely wreck you in the best way possible. 12 hours earlier, Isabel had been trying to disappear. That was her specialty now, vanishing into the world's most dangerous places, volunteering for missions other doctors refused, chasing penance like it was oxygen. 2 years since Seattle, 2 years since she'd made the call that killed 3 people on an operating table. 2 years of running from the lawsuit, the whispers, the look in her mentor's eyes that said, "You're finished here." Syria was supposed to be her erasure. Nothing but trauma surgery, no sleep, no past, no future either, which suited her fine. She'd been cleaning instruments in the pre-dawn darkness when his convoy rolled in. 3 armored vehicles, dust-covered and riddled with bullet holes. Her colleague, Dr. Youssef, had grabbed her arm. "Doctors Without Borders, we don't get involved in—" "Someone's dying," she'd interrupted, already moving toward the chaos. They'd pulled him from the second vehicle, this man dressed too well for a war zone, tactical gear that cost more than her yearly salary, a face that belonged on magazine covers, not militia hit lists. His security team was shouting orders in English and Arabic, weapons drawn, scanning for threats. And he was conscious, barely, staring at her with those impossible eyes as they carried him inside. "American?" he'd rasped. "Does it matter?" She'd been cutting away his vest, exposing the wound, entry just below the collarbone, no exit. The bullet was still inside, probably kissing his subclavian artery. "Matters. To me." His accent was subtle, refined, British boarding school layered over something older, something desert-born. "Marcus Kane." "Liar," her instincts whispered. Nobody named Marcus Kane needed 6 armed guards in a medical convoy in bandit country. But his heart rate was dropping, and she didn't have time for truth. Now, 3 hours into surgery with her hands inside his chest and her scrub soaked with his blood, Isabel finally understood why some women made catastrophically bad decisions. Because Marcus Kane, if that was even his real name, was looking at her like she was water and he'd been dying of thirst his entire life. "Found it," she muttered, clamping the artery. "Youssef, suction. I need to see what I'm doing." "We should evacuate," Youssef hissed. The shelling is getting closer. Then work faster. She didn't look up, didn't let herself think about the fact that the clinic's walls were canvas and hope, that they were 20 miles from anything resembling safety, that this man's enemies were probably circling back to finish the job. She just sewed. Precise, mechanical, the way she'd been trained before everything fell apart. Marcus Kane's hand caught her wrist. Impossible. He should have been unconscious from the anesthesia, but his grip was iron strong, pulling her close enough that she could see gold flecks in those dark eyes. "If I die," he whispered, "promise me, you won't stay here. You're not dying. Promise me, Isabel." Her breath stopped. "How do you know your name tag?" But something in his expression said he was lying again, that he'd known exactly who she was before his blood hit her table. The building shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Someone outside screamed a warning in Kurdish. "Promise," he insisted. "Fine, I promise. Now let go so I can save your life." He released her, eyes closing, that almost smile returning. Like he'd just won something, like getting shot was all part of some larger plan she couldn't see. Isabel returned to the surgery, her hands steady even as her world tilted sideways. Because she recognized the feeling blooming in her chest, had felt it once before, a lifetime ago, right before everything burned down. It was the dangerous heat of wanting something she couldn't have, the reckless pull toward a man who radiated secrets and violence like other men wore cologne. She'd sworn never again, had buried that part of herself in endless shifts and deliberate isolation. But Marcus Kane was bleeding under her hands, looking at her like she mattered, and somewhere between the first incision and the last suture, Isabel Cross realized her exile was about to end. Not with peace, with collision. The bullet came out clean, his vitals stabilized. Dawn broke over the Syrian desert in shades of orange and ash. And when Marcus Kane opened his eyes again, fully conscious this time, he spoke 4 words that changed everything. Time =, 0.6s. "I want you working for me." Isabel should have said no, should have walked away from the intensity in his gaze, from the obvious danger he represented, from whatever game he was playing with fake names and private armies. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Doing what?" Time =, 0.6s. His smile was dark promise and bright threat all at once. "Saving my life, again and again, until neither of us can tell the difference between survival and surrender." Outside, his security team was loading up. Inside, Isabel's hands were still shaking from adrenaline and proximity to something she didn't understand but already craved. "I don't even know who you really are," she whispered. "Yes, you do." Marcus sat up slowly, wincing, every movement controlled despite the fresh wound in his shoulder. "You know I'm the kind of man your instincts warn you about. You know I'm dangerous, possibly insane, definitely not Marcus Kane. Then why would I work for you?" He stood close enough that she could smell cedar and smoke and copper blood on his skin. "Because you're running from something too. Because you volunteer for suicide missions and call it altruism. Because when I looked at you with a bullet in my chest, you looked back." His voice dropped to raw honey. "And because you felt it too, Dr. Cross, that moment when survival stopped being the point." Her pulse was thunder. "You're delusional from blood loss." "Probably." He reached out, tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear with shocking gentleness. "Work for me anyway. 6 months. I run humanitarian missions to places like this. Medical teams, supply lines, infrastructure. I need a surgeon who doesn't ask questions and doesn't break under pressure. And if I say no, then I'll find you in the next war zone, and the next, until you understand that some collisions are inevitable." It was insane, reckless, everything she'd sworn to avoid. But Isabel was so tired of running, and this man, this beautiful, dangerous liar with secrets bleeding from every pore, was offering her a different kind of escape, one that felt like falling instead of hiding. 6 months, she agreed, even as warning bells screamed in her head. "But I want answers, real ones." Marcus Kane smiled like he'd just captured something precious. "Ask me anything, Dr. Cross. Just be prepared." Another explosion, closer this time, cut him off. His security team burst through the canvas walls, weapons raised, shouting about hostiles and extraction. Marcus moved with lethal grace despite his injury, positioning himself between Isabel and the door, every inch the soldier she suspected he was. "Time to go," he said calmly, as if bullets weren't shredding the air outside. He grabbed her hand, his blood still drying on her fingers, her fate now tangled with his in ways she couldn't begin to understand. And as they ran toward his waiting vehicle through smoke and chaos, Isabel Cross realized the truth. She'd spent 2 years volunteering for death. Now she'd just volunteered for something far more dangerous. Him. Isabel woke to silk sheets in the Mediterranean Sea. For 3 disorienting seconds, she thought she'd died in that Syrian clinic, that the explosion had taken her after all, and heaven looked suspiciously like a 5-star hotel suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking azure water. Then she remembered his hands pulling her into the armored vehicle, the helicopter extraction, his voice calm and commanding through the chaos. "I've got you. You're safe now." Nothing about Marcus Kane felt safe. She sat up, her body aching from 48 hours of adrenaline and exhaustion. Someone had changed her clothes. She was wearing an expensive silk nightgown she definitely hadn't packed. Her duffel bag sat in the corner, but next to it were 3 designer suitcases she'd never seen before. A note rested on the nightstand, written in bold, masculine script. "The clothes are yours. So is the black card on the dresser. Meet me on the terrace when you're ready to hear the truth. Omar. Omar. Not Marcus Kane." Isabel's hands trembled as she reached for her phone, but it was dead. Had been dead since Syria. She had no idea what day it was, where exactly she was, or who she'd just agreed to work for. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, she showered, pulled on one of the outfits from the mysterious suitcases, tailored linen pants and a silk blouse that fit perfectly, and followed the sound of the sea. The terrace was a study in wealth and taste, white marble, minimalist furniture, bougainvillea cascading down stone walls. And there, standing at the railing with his back to her, was the man who'd bled under her hands. Shirtless, bandaged, absolutely breathtaking. His skin was deep brown, catching the morning sun like polished mahogany. His back was muscled, scarred, the body of someone who'd seen combat, not just wealth. The bandage she'd applied was pristine white against his shoulder blade, a reminder of how close he'd come to dying. "Santorini," he said without turning around, his voice carrying easily over the breeze. "My private villa. We're alone except for security, who know to stay invisible." "Omar," Isabel said, testing the name. "Not Marcus. Prince Omar Al-Faisal." Now he turned, and the impact of his full attention nearly drove her back a step. "Third in line to a throne I'll never sit on. Former military commander, current humanitarian," that dark smile again. "And the man who's going to ruin you for anyone else, Dr. Isabel Cross." Her breath caught. "That's quite an introduction." "You wanted truth." He moved toward her, graceful despite his injury, predatory in a way that made her pulse spike. "Here it is. I run a private organization that provides medical care and infrastructure to war zones, but that's not why I do it." "Then why?" He stopped close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes again, close enough that his scent, cedar and something darker, more complex, wrapped around her like smoke. "Revenge." The word hung between them, brutal and honest. "When I was 8, Omar continued, his voice carefully controlled, "terrorists attacked my mother's village. She was visiting family, common people, farmers, nothing political. They burned everything, killed everyone. Made me watch from where my security had hidden me." Isabel's chest tightened. "Omar. I've spent 20 years hunting them. Every medical mission I fund, every humanitarian convoy I send, they're cover for intelligence gathering, for finding the men who did it, for making sure they pay." He was inches away now, his presence overwhelming, his honesty more seductive than any lie could be. "So when you ask if you're safe with me," he murmured, "the answer is no. I'm dangerous, Isabel. I use my wealth and position to commit violence the world will never see. I've killed men with my own hands. I'll kill more before I'm done." She should have been horrified, should have demanded he take her to the nearest embassy. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "Why tell me this?" "Because I want you to choose me anyway." His hand rose, hovering near her face but not quite touching. "I want you to know exactly who I am when you fall into my bed. And you will fall, Dr. Cross. We both know it started the moment your hands entered my chest. The arrogance should have enraged her, but God help her, he was right. She'd felt it. That electric pull, that sense of recognition, like some part of her had been waiting for someone exactly this damaged, this dangerous, this devastatingly beautiful. I came here to disappear, she managed, not to get tangled up in some prince's revenge fantasy. Too late. His thumb finally brushed her cheek, and heat exploded through her nerve endings. You're already tangled. The question is whether you run from it or lean in. That's not a fair question. Nothing about us is fair. His voice dropped to gravel and honey. I'm offering you 6 months of the most intense work you've ever done. Medical missions to places that will break your heart and test your skills. Private planes, luxury recovery time between deployments, resources you've never dreamed of. And you? The words escaped before she could stop them. What are you offering besides logistics? His smile was pure sin. Everything you've been afraid to want since Seattle. Isabel jerked it back. How do you... I know about the surgery, the lawsuit, the 3 patients who died because of a split-second decision. Omar's expression held no judgment, only understanding that somehow felt more dangerous. I know you've been punishing yourself for 2 years, hiding in war zones, pretending martyrdom is the same as redemption. You had me investigated. The moment I saw your name tag, yes, before my surgery was even finished. He caught her wrist gently, his touch burning. I know you're brilliant, wounded and running from yourself. I know you haven't let anyone touch you since it happened. Haven't let yourself feel anything but guilt. Tears pricked her eyes. You have no right. I have every right to know who I'm trusting with my life and my mission. He pulled her closer, inexorable, his wounded shoulder apparently no impediment to his strength. But here's what the investigation didn't tell me. You're exquisite when you work, fearless. Your hands don't shake even when bombs are falling. You looked at me like I was worth saving, and I haven't felt worth saving since I was 8 years old. Omar. Say yes. His forehead nearly touched hers, his breath warm on her lips. 6 months. Let me give you a reason to stop running. Let me show you that some mistakes don't define us. They just make us sharp enough to survive what comes next. And if I can't separate work from this, she gestured between them at the crackling tension that made the air feel alive. Then don't. His voice was dark velvet. I'm not asking you to be professional, Isabel. I'm asking you to be mine, my surgeon, my partner, my... Don't say lover. But her voice was breathless, betraying her. I was going to say salvation. His thumb traced her lower lip, and she nearly whimpered. But lover works too. This was insane. She'd known him 3 days, most of which he'd spent unconscious or bleeding. She didn't know his favorite color, his birthday, whether he preferred coffee or tea. She knew nothing except that he was dangerous and damaged and offering her something that felt like drowning and flying at the same time. 6 months, she agreed, her voice barely audible. But there are rules. Name them. No lies between us, ever. Agreed. I'm your surgeon first. Whatever. It doesn't compromise patient care. Naturally. And if I want to leave, you walk away, no questions, no pressure. His eyes held hers, intense and honest. I won't cage you, Isabel. I'll just make it impossible for you to want to leave. The confidence should have been off-putting. Instead, it sent liquid heat pooling low in her belly. One more thing, she whispered. Anything. Kiss me. Now, before I lose my nerve. For a heartbeat, Omar just stared at her, this fierce, wounded prince who'd laid his darkness at her feet like an offering. Then his hand slid into her hair, his injured body pressed against hers, and his mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole her breath and her resistance in one devastating stroke. He kissed like a man who'd been waiting his whole life for permission to devour her. Deep, demanding, his tongue sliding against hers with shocking intimacy. She tasted coffee and desire, felt the tremor in his body that said his control was a thin veneer over something wild. Her hands found his chest, careful of his wound, But he caught her wrists and pressed them flat against his heart. It thundered beneath her palms, this powerful, dangerous man undone by a kiss. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Omar's smile was triumphant and tender at once. "Welcome to your new life, Dr. Cross." "I'm going to regret this," she breathed. "Probably." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise and a warning. "But you'll never regret feeling alive again." The rest of the day passed in a haze of impossible decisions. Omar showed her his operation, a legitimate humanitarian organization with offices in Geneva, medical partnerships across Africa and the Middle East, and enough funding to make most NGOs weep with envy. But underneath the altruism was a shadow network. Intelligence officers posing as logistics coordinators, security teams trained in counterterrorism, supply chains that could move weapons as easily as medicine. "We deploy where they operate," Omar explained, showing her maps marked with red zones. "Yemen, Somalia, Syria, Afghanistan, places where terrorists hide in civilian populations. My teams provide real medical care, real infrastructure, but they also gather intelligence." "And when you find them?" Isabel asked, though she already knew. "I make them pay." No hesitation, no apology. Not quickly, not cleanly. The way they made my mother pay. She should have been repulsed. Instead, she thought of all the victims she'd treated in these war zones, the children, the mothers, the innocent caught in endless cycles of violence. Omar's revenge was dark justice, but it was justice nonetheless. "How many have you killed?" The question emerged clinically, surgeon to patient. 17. He met her eyes. 17 men directly responsible for that village. There are 3 left. "And then?" "Then I figure out who I am when the hunger for revenge finally dies." His expression flickered, vulnerable for just a moment. "If it dies." Isabel reached for his hand, this complicated man who'd somehow become her responsibility, her attraction, her maybe future. "It will," she said quietly, "and I'll be there when it does." His fingers tightened on hers. "Careful, Dr. Cross. That sounds like commitment." "Maybe it is." That evening they had dinner on the terrace, fresh seafood, Greek wine, conversation that ranged from medicine to philosophy to the various ways Omar had nearly died before age 30. He was brilliant, funny, deeply damaged. Every word made her want him more. "Our first mission is in 3 weeks, he said over dessert. "Nairobi. There's a refugee camp near the Somali border that needs surgical support. 2 weeks in the field, then back here for recovery." "And between missions?" His smile was pure seduction. "I thought we'd spend it getting to know each other, shopping in Paris, diving in the Red Sea, teaching you to shoot, since you'll be in dangerous territory." "I don't need to know how to shoot." "You do if you're traveling with me." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to intimate territory. "And Isabel, every moment we're not saving lives, I'm going to be seducing you. Fair warning." Her breath hitched. "What if I seduce you first? Then I'll die a happy man." The tension between them was unbearable now, days of adrenaline and proximity and unresolved desire creating pressure that had to break soon. "Omar," she whispered, "your shoulder is fine. You were shot 4 days ago. And you're still treating me like a patient instead of a man." He stood, moving around the table with lethal grace, pulling her to her feet. "I don't want your professional care right now, Isabel. I want your mouth, your hands, your surrender." "I don't surrender easily." "Good." His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her lips. "I like a challenge, and I've got 6 months to break down every wall you've built. Maybe I'll break down yours first." His laugh was dark music. "You already have." He kissed her again, and this time there was no gentleness, just raw need, and 2 damaged people reaching for something that felt like healing but tasted like fire. When they finally pulled apart, Omar's eyes were molten. "Go to bed, Isabel. Alone. Because if you stay here 1 more minute, I'm going to take you against this terrace wall, and you deserve better than a wounded man who can't give you the first time you deserve." She should have left, should have retreated to her silk sheets and processed everything. Instead, she pressed up on her toes and whispered against his lips, What if I don't want to deserve it? What if I just want you? Omar's control shattered. She felt it in the way his hands tightened on her waist, heard it in his sharp intake of breath. 3 weeks, he growled. Give me 3 weeks to heal, to plan, to build anticipation until we both lose our minds. And then? Then I show you exactly what it means to belong to a prince who fights like a soldier and loves like he's got nothing left to lose. It was a promise and a threat, and the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her. Isabel walked away on shaking legs, her body alive with want, her mind spinning with impossible choices. Behind her she heard Omar's voice, rough with restraint. Sweet dreams, Dr. Cross, because mine are going to be filthy. She smiled into the darkness. 3 weeks suddenly felt like forever. The bullet missed Isabel's head by 3 inches. She didn't scream, just dropped flat behind the market stall, her medical training overriding panic. Around her, the Nairobi refugee camp exploded into chaos, mothers grabbing children, men shouting warnings, the crack of gunfire splitting the afternoon heat. And then Omar was there, covering her body with his, weapon drawn, his voice deadly calm in her ear. Stay down. Don't move until I say. 2 weeks. They'd had 2 perfect weeks in Santorini, swimming at dawn, cooking together, long conversations that revealed the man beneath the prince. He told her about his childhood in the palace, the weight of expectations, the way violence had become his only language after his mother's death. She'd told him about Seattle, about the moment she'd chosen wrong and 3 people died, about the crushing guilt that followed her like a shadow. They hadn't slept together. Omar had insisted on waiting, on building something that felt like more than just attraction. I want you desperate for me, he'd whispered one night, his hands mapping her body over her clothes, driving her mad with restraint. I want you so hungry that when I finally take you, you'll know it means something. She'd been desperate ever since. Now, pressed against the dirt with his heart thundering against her back, Isabel realized that desperation had transformed into something far more dangerous. Trust. My 3 o'clock, Omar murmured, his lips brushing her ear. Armed men, probably militia looking for medical supplies. This isn't about us. Wrong place, wrong time. How many? 4, maybe 5. His hand found hers, squeezed once. When I move, you run for the clinic. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you. You're a surgeon, not a soldier. Let me do what I'm good at. He kissed her temple, quick and fierce. Trust me, Isabel. Then he was gone, moving with lethal precision toward the threat. Isabel ran. 20 minutes later, the camp was secure. Omar's security team had subdued the attackers, local bandits, not the terrorists he hunted. No one had died, though 2 refugees needed treatment for minor injuries. Isabel found Omar behind the clinic, washing blood off his hands. Not his blood this time. He'd taken down 2 men with brutal efficiency, protecting civilians who'd already survived too much violence. You're shaking, he observed, reaching for her. She went into his arms without hesitation, pressing against his chest, breathing him in. I hate that you're good at that. At violence? At making it look easy. She pulled back to look at him. At being exactly what you promised. Dangerous, capable, completely terrifying. His smile was grim. Having second thoughts? No, the certainty surprised her. Just first realizations about what loving you might actually mean. Omar went very still. Loving me? The words had escaped without permission, but Isabel didn't take them back. 2 weeks of intimacy without sex, of emotional vulnerability without physical release, had stripped away her ability to lie, to him or herself. I'm falling, she admitted quietly. Fast and hard and probably stupidly. So if this is just a game to you, Omar, if I'm just another mission, tell me now before I can't survive the landing. He cupped her face with the hands still damp from washing away violence. Isabel, look at me. She met those dark, devastating eyes. You're not a mission, he said fiercely. You're the first real thing I've felt in 20 years. Every moment with you, cooking breakfast, watching you work, hearing you laugh. It's like waking up from a nightmare I didn't know I was having. Time =, 0.6s. Then why won't you touch me? The frustration finally spilled over. We sleep in the same villa. We shower in separate rooms. You kiss me until I can't breathe, and then you pull away. I don't understand, because I'm afraid. The admission clearly cost him. I'm afraid that once I have you, I'll become someone who has something to lose, and men like me, men who hunt monsters, we can't afford to love anything more than revenge. Isabel's heart cracked open. What if revenge isn't enough anymore? Then I'm already lost. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, soft, reverent, completely different from his earlier hunger. Come to Paris with me, next week after we finish here. Let me court you properly like you deserve. Restaurants, museums, nights at the opera. Let me prove I can be more than a weapon. I don't need proof. I do, his voice roughened. I need to know I can give you romance, not just danger, that I can make you smile without blood on my hands. Say yes, Isabel. Let me try to be the man you're falling for. How could she refuse him anything when he looked at her like that, like she was both salvation and doom, like her answer mattered more than his next breath? Yes, she whispered. Paris, romance, all of it. Omar's smile transformed his face. Then get ready, Dr. Cross, because I'm about to seduce you so thoroughly, you'll forget you ever wanted to disappear. Paris in October was golden light and cobblestones, fallen leaves and wine-dark evenings. Omar had rented an apartment overlooking the Seine, modern luxury with floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the city into art. The first night, he took her to a Michelin-starred restaurant where the chef personally prepared their meal. They talked for hours about books, music, the strange intersection of privilege and purpose that had defined both their lives. Omar was charming, attentive, his hand finding hers across the table like it belonged there. Tell me something you've never told anyone, he requested over dessert. Isabel considered, then offered truth. Sometimes I'm glad about Seattle, not about the deaths, God, never that, but about what it made me become. Because if it hadn't happened, I'd still be in some comfortable practice, treating rich people's vanity procedures, never knowing what I was capable of. That's dark, Dr. Cross. I learned from the best, she squeezed his fingers. Your turn, something you've never told anyone. Omar was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, I remember my mother singing. That morning before they took her to the village, she was singing while she braided my sister's hair, something in Arabic, something about gardens and rain. And sometimes I can't remember her face, but I remember that song. And it destroys me. Tears pricked Isabel's eyes. Omar, don't cry for me. But his voice was gentle. Just remember I'm human. Beneath the violence and the wealth, I'm just a man who misses his mother and wants to believe he's more than the sum of his revenge. She stood, moved around the table, and kissed him in full view of Paris's elite dining public. Kissed him like they were alone, like his pain was hers to share, like love was already a foregone conclusion. When they finally pulled apart, Omar's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. Take me home, Isabel whispered. Not to sleep, not to wait. Take me home and show me you're more than revenge. His hand trembled as he signaled for the check. They barely made it through the apartment door. Omar pressed her against the wall, his mouth claiming hers with weeks of pent-up hunger, his hands finally touching her the way she'd craved. He pulled her silk dress up her thighs, groaning when his fingers found bare skin. Tell me you want this, he demanded, his voice wrecked. Tell me you're sure. I've been sure since Syria. She'd arched against him, desperate for friction, for relief, for him. I want you, Omar, all of you, the prince, the soldier, the broken man who thinks he doesn't deserve softness. I don't deserve you. Then take me anyway. Something in him snapped. He lifted her, her legs wrapping around his waist, carrying her to the bedroom while kissing her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. The city lights painted them in gold and shadow as he laid her on silk sheets, his body covering hers with delicious weight. I need you to know, he said, his hands framing her face with unexpected gentleness. This means something to me. You mean something, not just desire, Isabel, something I don't have words for yet. Then show me. He did. Omar undressed her slowly, reverently, his mouth following the path of his hands, tasting her throat, her collarbone, the curve of her breasts. He worshipped her like she was sacred, like every touch was prayer and promise combined. When she reached for his clothes, he caught her hands. "Not yet. Let me." "Let you what?" "Learn you. Map every sound you make, every place that makes you shiver." His voice was dark honey and sin. "I've waited weeks for this, Isabel. I'm not rushing." He wasn't lying. Omar took his time, discovering her with skilled hands and a wicked mouth, reducing her to incoherent pleas. He found every sensitive spot, the curve of her hip, the inside of her thigh, places she didn't know could feel like that. And he watched her the entire time, those intense eyes, tracking every reaction, storing away her pleasure like treasure. "You're so beautiful like this," he murmured against her skin, "coming apart from me, trusting me with this." "Omar, please." "Please what?" His fingers had traced patterns that made her arch off the bed. "Tell me what you need." "You. Inside me. Now." His control finally shattered. He stripped away his remaining clothes, and Isabel got her first full view of him, all lean muscle and battle scars, powerful and scarred and absolutely magnificent. "Protection?" she managed. "Taken care of." He kissed her deeply. "I've got you. Just feel." Then he was there, pressing into her with aching slowness, giving her time to adjust to him. The sensation was overwhelming, not just physical, but emotional, like every barrier between them was finally, irrevocably falling. "Look at me," Omar commanded softly. She did, meeting his gaze as he began to move. The intimacy of it, the eye contact, the whispered words, the way their bodies found perfect rhythm, undid her completely. This wasn't just sex. This was connection, vulnerability, two damaged people choosing each other despite every reason not to. When release finally came, it was for both of them simultaneously. A crescendo that felt like falling and flying and finding home all at once. Afterward, wrapped in each other in tangled sheets, Omar pressed his lips to her temple. "I love you," he said simply. "I didn't want to, wasn't looking for it, but there it is." Isabel's chest felt too full. "I love you too. Even though you're dangerous and broken and probably going to get me killed. Not if I kill everyone else first." But he was smiling, relaxed in a way she'd never seen. "Stay with me, Isabel. Not just 6 months. Stay until I figure out who I am without revenge. Help me become someone worth your love. You're already worth it. Then help me believe it." She kissed him, soft and slow. "Deal. But I have conditions." "Of course you do." His hand traced lazy patterns on her spine. "Name them." "When you find the last 3 men, the ones who killed your mother, you don't do it alone. You let me be there. Not to stop you, but to witness, to make sure you come back to yourself after." Omar tensed. "That's not something you should see. I've seen you kill, Omar. I've had your blood on my hands and watched you fight. I'm not some delicate thing who needs protecting from your darkness." She met his eyes. "I'm the woman who loves you. All of you. Which means I'm there for the revenge too." He stared at her for a long moment, something like awe in his expression. "You're terrifying, Dr. Cross." "I learned from the best," she smiled. "Do we have a deal?" "We have a deal." He pulled her closer, his heart steady against hers. "Though I reserve the right to seduce you into changing your mind. Time = 0.6s. You can try." They made love again, slower this time, learning each other with new freedom. And somewhere between Paris lights and whispered promises, Isabel realized the truth. She'd stopped running. Not toward safety, but toward the most dangerous thing of all, a future with a man whose love felt like falling and whose darkness matched her own. Outside, the city sparkled. Inside, 2 broken people held each other and pretended tomorrow wasn't waiting with its violence and choices and consequences. For tonight, there was just this: skin and breath and the radical act of being known. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because morning would bring everything else. The phone call came at 3 a.m. in Geneva. Isabel was alone. Omar had flown to Cairo for meetings with intelligence contacts, promising to return by morning. She'd stayed behind, catching up on medical journals, enjoying the rare quiet of his penthouse apartment. The voice on the line was calm, almost polite. "Dr. Cross, we have a situation that requires your skills." She sat up, instantly alert. "Who is this?" "A friend of your employer. There's been an incident at our compound in Yemen. Multiple casualties. We need a surgeon immediately." Something felt wrong. Omar's team always went through official channels, never cold calls to her personal number. "Give me the coordinator's name," she said carefully. "I'll need to verify." "There's no time for verification. People are dying." A pause. "Unless you'd prefer we tell Prince Omar that his surgeon refused to help when we needed her most?" The manipulation was obvious, but it worked. Isabel's guilt, her eternal companion since Seattle, surged forward. "Where do I go?" "A car is waiting outside. Bring your medical kit. We'll brief you en route." She should have called Omar, should have verified the request through proper channels. But 3 years of emergency medicine had trained her to move fast when lives were at stake. Isabel grabbed her kit and went downstairs. The car was black, expensive, windows tinted. The driver wore a suit but said nothing as she climbed in. They drove through empty Geneva streets, heading toward the private airport. It wasn't until they passed the airport entirely that Isabel realized her mistake. "Where are we going?" She reached for her phone. The driver's hand shot out, impossibly fast, injecting something into her arm before she could react. "I'm sorry," he said in accented English, "but the prince has taken something that belongs to my employer. Now we're taking something that belongs to him." The world tilted. Isabel tried to fight the sedative, tried to reach the door handle, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Her last thought before darkness took her: Omar is going to destroy them for this. She woke to heat and dust and the smell of diesel fuel. Her head pounded, her mouth tasted like copper, and her hands were zip-tied behind her back. She was in some kind of storage room, concrete walls, a single bare bulb, no windows. Somewhere outside, men spoke in Arabic. Isabel forced herself to breathe through the panic. She was a surgeon. She'd worked in war zones. She could survive this. The door opened. A man entered, late 40s, expensive suit incongruous with the surroundings, cold eyes that assessed her like inventory. "Dr. Cross, welcome to Yemen. I apologize for the deception." "Who are you?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "My name is Rashid Al-Hashim. I'm a businessman with interests that occasionally conflict with your lover's activities." He pulled up a chair, sitting far too close. "Prince Omar has killed 17 of my associates over the past decade. I'd like him to stop." "Then take it up with him. I'm just his surgeon." "You're far more than that," Rashid smiled, and it was worse than anger. "You're the first thing Omar Al-Faisal has loved since his mother died, which makes you the perfect leverage." Ice flooded her veins. "He'll kill you for this." "Probably. But first he'll negotiate. And what I want from him is very simple. He stops hunting my people, or you die. Slowly, creatively, in ways that will haunt him forever." Isabel met his eyes, refusing to show fear. "You don't know him very well if you think threats will work. Omar doesn't negotiate with terrorists." "Then you'll die, and he'll learn a valuable lesson about the cost of revenge." Rashid stood, brushing invisible dust from his suit. "We'll contact him shortly. In the meantime, make yourself comfortable. These may be your last days. Might as well enjoy the accommodations." He left, locking the door behind him. Isabel slumped against the wall, her mind racing. She wasn't naive. She knew exactly what kind of the man had taken her, what he was capable of. Omar had described his enemies in detail: ruthless, sadistic, men who'd built empires on violence and terror. But she also knew Omar. Knew the cold fury that lived beneath his charm, the lethal precision with which he moved, the absolute commitment he brought to everything he cared about. He would come for her. The question was whether she'd survive long enough to see it. Omar received the video 12 hours after Isabel disappeared. He was still in Cairo when his head of security burst into the meeting, face grim, tablet in hand. "Sir, you need to see this." The video was short. Isabel, bound to a chair in a concrete room, bruised but alive. And behind her, Rashid Al-Hashim, the last name on Omar's list, the man who'd orchestrated his mother's murder, who'd evaded justice for 20 years. Rashid's voice was smooth. Prince Omar, I have something you value. Let's discuss terms. The video ended. For 10 seconds, Omar didn't move, didn't breathe. Every person in the room felt the temperature drop as fury, pure Arctic fury, replaced the charming prince they knew. When Omar finally spoke, his voice was death itself. Find him. I don't care what it costs, what you have to burn, who you have to kill. Find him, now. His team scattered like leaves before a storm. Omar made 3 phone calls, the first to a contact in Yemeni intelligence who owed him favors, the second to a mercenary group he'd used before for sensitive operations, the third to a weapons dealer who specialized in untraceable equipment. Then he called Isabel's phone, knowing she wouldn't answer, needing to hear her voicemail anyway. Hi, you've reached Dr. Isabel Cross. I'm probably elbow deep in someone's chest cavity right now, so leave a message and I'll call you back. Unless you're calling to tell me I've won the lottery, in which case, call back immediately. Her laugh at the end, that small, self-deprecating laugh, nearly broke him. Omar ended the call and allowed himself 30 seconds of pure emotion, terror that he'd lose her, rage that someone had dared touch what was his, crushing guilt that his revenge had put her in danger. Then he locked it all away and became what he'd always been. A weapon. Sir. His security chief returned, breathing hard. We have a location, compound outside Sana'a. Heavily defended, at least 20 armed men. It's a trap. He wants you to come. Of course he does. Omar checked his weapons with practiced efficiency. He thinks I'll negotiate, that I value her life more than revenge. Don't you? Omar met his eyes. I value both equally. Which is why Rashid al-Hashim is going to learn what happens when you take everything from me twice. The assault came at dawn. Isabel heard it before she saw it. Explosions in the distance, gunfire, men shouting in panic. Her door burst open, not her captors, but one of Omar's security team, bolt cutters in hand. Dr. Cross, we need to move, now. He cut her zip ties, pulled her to her feet. They ran through corridors filled with smoke and chaos, bodies already littering the ground. Isabel tried not to look at the faces, tried not to think about the violence Omar had unleashed to reach her. They burst into a courtyard, and there he was. Omar stood in the center of the carnage like an avenging angel, tactical gear blood-splattered, weapon raised, absolutely terrifying in his precision. He was taking down Rashid's men with lethal efficiency, no hesitation, no mercy. This was the soldier beneath the prince, the weapon beneath the lover. Their eyes met across the smoke. For one breathless moment, Isabel saw everything in his expression, relief that she was alive, fury that she'd been taken, love so fierce it hurt to witness. Then movement behind him, Rashid emerging from a doorway with a gun raised at Omar's unprotected back. "Omar!" Isabel screamed. He turned, but not fast enough. The shot rang out. Omar went down. Everything slowed to nightmare speed. Isabel was running before she thought, before her security escort could stop her, her medical training overriding survival instinct. She hit her knees beside Omar, hands immediately searching for the wound. Upper chest, right side, breathing compromised but not immediately fatal if she could control the bleeding. "I've got you," she whispered, pressing her hands against the wound. "Stay with me. You don't get to die after coming all this way." "Isabel." His hand found hers, slick with blood. "Get out. He's still—" "Not leaving you. Not ever." She looked up, found the guard. "I need my medical kit now, and get us extraction. He can't survive long without proper surgery." Gunfire erupted again. Omar's team was taking down the remaining men, securing the compound. But Rashid had disappeared into the building's interior. "He's mine," Omar gasped, trying to sit up. "You're shot. You're staying down." "Isabel." "No," she pressed harder on his wound, her voice fierce. "You came for me. Let me return the favor. Let me save you this time." His eyes held hers, and something shifted. Surrender, trust, the bone-deep knowledge that they were partners in this, not prince and surgeon, but equals in darkness and light. He gets away. Then he gets away. "I'm not losing you for revenge, Omar, not when I just found you." "Touching," Rashid's voice came from behind them. Isabel turned to find him in the doorway, weapon aimed at her head. but ultimately futile. He hunted me for 20 years. Did he really think I wouldn't be prepared? Omar's hand moved toward his weapon, but he was too weak, too slow. Rashid's finger tightened on the trigger. The shot came from an unexpected direction. Rashid staggered, weapon falling, shock on his face. Behind him stood one of his own men, younger, face twisted with some internal conflict. "My brother," the man said in broken English, looking at Omar. "You saved my brother, in Somalia. Medical mission, 2 years ago. Gave him insulin, medicine, life." He looked at Rashid's body. "This man took everything from my village too. Consider us even." Then he disappeared into the smoke. Omar sagged against Isabel, the adrenaline finally fading. "Did that just happen?" "Yes," she laughed, slightly hysterical. "Your humanitarian work just saved both our lives. How's that for irony?" "Remind me to fund more medical missions. Remind me to kill you myself if you ever take a bullet for me again." But she was crying now, the terror and relief finally breaking through. "You came for me. You beautiful, stupid, violent man. You came for me. Always." His hand cupped her face, smearing blood across her cheek. "I would burn down countries for you, Isabel. Burn down the whole world." "I know." She kissed him, soft and desperate. "That's what terrifies me." The helicopter arrived minutes later. Omar's team loaded him aboard while Isabel maintained pressure on his wound, refusing to let anyone else touch him. As they lifted off, leaving the compound and Rashid's body behind, Omar's eyes never left her face. "It's over," he murmured. "They're all gone. Every person responsible for my mother, dead or captured. It's finally over." "What happens now?" "Now?" His smile was weak but genuine. "Now I figure out who I am without revenge, with you. If you'll still have me after seeing what I'm capable of." Isabel thought about the violence, the blood, the absolute devastation Omar had unleashed to save her. Thought about the man who'd killed for her, who'd nearly died for her, who loved her with the same intensity he brought to everything else. "I'll have you," she said simply. "All of you, the prince, the soldier, the man trying to be better. I'll have all of it. Even knowing what I am. Especially knowing what you are." She pressed her hand over his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady beneath her palm. "You're mine, Omar, and I protect what's mine." His laugh was soft, fading as shock began to set in. "Remind me never to cross you, Dr. Cross." "Too late. You already stole my heart in Syria." "Best decision I ever made." His eyes drifted closed. "Don't let me die before I marry you." "Marry, Omar. Stay awake, Omar." But he was already unconscious, his body finally surrendering to trauma and blood loss. Isabel worked through the helicopter ride, through the emergency landing in Djibouti, through 8 hours of surgery in a military hospital. She worked with hands that didn't shake and a heart that wouldn't quit, saving the man who'd saved her, proving that some love stories were written in blood and fire and the absolute refusal to let go. When Omar finally woke 48 hours later, Isabel was asleep in a chair beside his bed, her hand wrapped around his. He squeezed her fingers. She jerked awake, eyes finding his immediately. "You're awake. How do you feel?" "Like I got shot rescuing a stubborn woman from terrorists." "You did get shot rescuing a stubborn woman from terrorists." "Worth it." He tugged her hand, pulling her onto the bed beside him. "About that marriage proposal. You were delirious from blood loss. I was completely lucid." His eyes held hers, serious despite his weakness. "Marry me, Isabel. Not because of the kidnapping or the rescue or the drama. Marry me because I want to wake up every day and choose you. Because revenge is over and I need a new purpose. Because you're the only person who's ever looked at my darkness and loved me anyway." Isabel's throat tightened. "That's a terrible proposal. I'm wounded. I'll do better when I can get out of bed and find a ring." "I don't need a ring." "So that's a yes?" She kissed him instead of answering, soft and deep and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Omar's smile was radiant. "I'll take that as a yes." "It's a yes." She settled against his uninjured side, careful of his wounds. "But we're having a long engagement. I want to make sure you can survive civilian life before I legally bind myself to your chaos." "Deal. How does 6 months sound?" Perfect. She laced her fingers through his. What do we do now? Your mission is over. No more revenge. No more hunting. Omar was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on her hand. We keep doing the medical work, the humanitarian missions, but this time, it's real, not cover for anything else. We actually save lives, build infrastructure, make the world smaller and less dark. And the organization becomes legitimate, a real NGO, properly funded, transparently operated. I'll use my wealth for something other than violence. He looked at her. With you leading the medical team, if you want. I want, she kissed his shoulder. I want all of it. The work, the purpose, the life we build together. I want ordinary days and extraordinary love. I want to stop running and start living. No more running, Omar agreed. Just us, building something good from the ashes of everything bad. Outside the window, the African sun was setting in shades of gold and crimson. Inside, two people who'd found each other in violence discovered they could also find each other in peace. It wasn't the ending Isabel had expected when she'd operated on a dying prince in Syria. It was better. 6 months after Yemen, Isabel stood in a village clinic in Uganda teaching local medical students how to perform emergency appendectomies and realized she'd forgotten what guilt felt like. Not completely. Seattle still haunted her quiet moments, still surfaced in nightmares. But the crushing weight that had defined 3 years of her life had transformed into something manageable, something human. Omar's organization, now officially registered as the Al Faisal Foundation, operated 12 clinics across East Africa and the Middle East. Real clinics with real doctors doing real good. No hidden agendas, no intelligence gathering, just medicine and infrastructure and the slow, steady work of saving lives. It turned out Omar was as intense about humanitarian work as he'd been about revenge. Dr. Cross, one of her students approached nervously. The supply truck is here. Should we inventory now or wait until... Now is good. I'll help. Isabel stripped off her gloves, smiling. And it's Dr. Isabel. We've been working together for 3 months. You can use my first name. The student, a brilliant young woman named Amara, smiled back shyly. Dr. Isabel, then. Will Prince Omar be joining us this week? Tomorrow. He's finishing negotiations in Nairobi for the new trauma center. You must miss him. Every day. The admission came easily now. But the work matters, and we're building something that will outlast both of us. It was true. They spent weeks apart now. Isabel in the field, Omar managing operations, fundraising, navigating the complex politics of international aid. But their reunions were electric. Stolen weeks in Santorini, quick meetings in Nairobi, video calls that lasted hours and always ended with longing. The separation made them stronger somehow, proved their relationship was more than proximity and adrenaline. They were partners, in work, in purpose, in the future they were carefully constructing. Still, Isabel missed him with an ache that never quite faded. Her phone buzzed. Omar's face filled the screen. He'd set his own contact photo to a ridiculous selfie from their last vacation, all white teeth and wind-blown hair. Tell me you're calling with good news, she answered, moving to a quiet corner of the clinic. The best news. His voice was warm honey through the speaker. The Nairobi Center is approved. We break ground next month. 2 operating theaters, full ICU, training facilities for local surgeons. Everything we planned. Omar, that's incredible. It's us, he corrected. Your vision, my resources. We make a good team, Dr. Cross. The best team, she lowered her voice. When do I get you back? Missing me. Desperately. It's been 3 weeks. I'm starting to forget what you taste like. His sharp intake of breath made her smile. Even thousands of miles apart, she could still affect him. Tomorrow, he promised, voice rough. I'm flying in at dawn. Clear your schedule for the weekend. I'm supposed to observe surgeries. Delegate, I haven't had my hands on you in 22 days, Isabel. I'm not spending our reunion time sharing you with patients. Heat flooded her body. Bossy prince. You're bossy prince who's going to remind you exactly who you belong to the moment we're alone. Promises, promises. I never make promises I can't keep. His tone shifted, becoming serious. Isabel, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have mentioned weeks ago, but I was waiting for the right time. Her stomach dropped. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just complicated. He paused. My family wants to meet you. Officially. My father is hosting a state dinner in 2 months, and he's specifically requested your presence as my fiancée. Isabel's heart hammered. They'd been engaged for 6 months, but the wedding date remained nebulous. Something about wanting to establish the foundation first, about Omar needing time to adjust to life without his mission. She'd been patient, understanding. But meeting his family meant making it real in ways that terrified her. Your father the king, she said slowly, the one you haven't spoken to in 5 years. The same, Omar sighed. Reconciliation was inevitable. He approves of the foundation work, wants to support it publicly, which means acknowledging me again, and you. What if they hate me? I'm just a doctor from Seattle. I don't know anything about royal protocols or... They'll love you. His certainty was absolute. You're brilliant, compassionate, and you saved their disaster of a son from self-destruction. My father already approves. He had you investigated months ago. Of course he did. She laughed despite her nerves. Your family has boundary issues. Says the woman who demanded to be present for my revenge killings. That was different. How? That was about knowing all of you. This is about them judging whether I'm worthy of you. The old insecurity crept in, the doctor who'd made fatal mistakes, who'd spent years running, who still wasn't sure she deserved happiness. Isabel. Omar's voice softened. You're not on trial. You're already mine. The dinner is just formality, a public acknowledgement of what everyone already knows, that I'm irreversibly, catastrophically in love with you, and nothing my family says will change that. Even if your father forbids it. I'm third in line for a throne I never wanted. He can't forbid anything, but he won't. I've seen the reports he commissioned. He knows your history, your work, your value. He's thrilled I found someone who can tolerate me. Isabel felt the tension ease. When you put it that way. Say yes. Come to the dinner. Let me show you off to people who've only ever seen me as a weapon or a disappointment. Let them see what you see, the man I'm becoming because of you. How could she refuse him anything when he spoke like that? Yes, she agreed. But you're teaching me proper etiquette. I'm not curtsying to your father and accidentally starting an international incident. Deal. Though watching you accidentally insult foreign dignitaries might be worth it. They talked for another hour. About the foundation, about her students, about the ridiculous argument Omar had witnessed between 2 Nairobi city officials over parking spaces, normal things, mundane things, the kind of conversation that proved they were more than their dramatic beginning. When they finally hung up, Isabel felt lighter. Tomorrow Omar would arrive. They'd have their weekend, probably wouldn't leave the bedroom much if his tone was any indication. Then, back to work, to the slow, steady rhythm they'd established. It was good. Better than good. So why did she feel like something was waiting just beyond her peripheral vision? Some shadow not quite banished, some threat not quite neutralized. Omar's plane landed at dawn, as promised. Isabel met him on the airstrip, and the moment he saw her, everything else ceased to matter. He closed the distance in 3 strides, lifting her off her feet, kissing her like they'd been separated for months instead of weeks. God, I missed you, he breathed against her mouth. Show me how much. He did. In the back of the SUV on the way to their lodging, against the door of their suite, in the shower, on the bed. Hours of reconnecting, relearning, reminding each other why the separation was worth it when the reunion felt like this. Afterward, wrapped in sheets and each other, Omar traced the small scar on Isabel's shoulder, a souvenir from Yemen, from the kidnapping that had nearly destroyed them both. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Staying with me, choosing this life. Never. She turned to face him. Do you regret giving up revenge? Sometimes. His honesty was refreshing. Late at night when I can't sleep, I still see my mother's face. Still feel that rage. But then I think about the clinic we opened in Somalia, about the kids attempted baklava with mixed results. It's burnt, she announced, pulling the tray from the oven. It's perfect. He stole a piece, kissing her honeyed lips. Everything you make is perfect. Liar. You're a liar. He pulled her close, swaying to music only he could hear. Dance with me. There's no music. There's always music when you're near. It was cheesy and romantic and exactly what Isabel needed. They danced in the kitchen, burnt baklava forgotten, the future bright and uncomplicated for the first time in either of their lives. Until Omar's phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. And again. Answer it, Isabel said reluctantly. It might be important. Omar checked the screen, and his expression shifted, something dark and guarded replacing the easy joy. It's my father, he answered, speaking in rapid Arabic, his body language growing tense. Isabel couldn't understand the words, but she recognized the tone. Authority, demands, expectations. When Omar finally ended the call, his jaw was tight. What's wrong? My father. He ran a hand through his hair. The state dinner has been moved up. 2 weeks instead of 2 months. Some political situation that requires public displays of family unity. 2 weeks? Omar, I can't just leave the clinic. I know. I told him that. He said to bring your students, make it part of their training. He'll cover all expenses, arrange everything. He's very insistent about meeting you sooner rather than later. Something in his voice made her nervous. Why? Omar was quiet for too long. Then, because there are rumors. About us, about my past, about whether I'm fit to represent the family publicly. He wants to assess the situation personally, which means assessing you. The old fear crept back, that she wasn't good enough, that her past would poison Omar's future, that loving him would ultimately hurt him. What if I fail his assessment? She asked quietly. Omar cupped her face, fierce and certain. You won't. And if he tries to come between us, I'll choose you. Every time, without hesitation. You're not negotiable, Isabel. You're the entire point. She believed him. But she also knew royal families didn't give up their sons easily, especially sons they'd just reconciled with, sons who could still be useful to them. 2 weeks, she repeated, trying to sound confident. I can do 2 weeks. We can do 2 weeks. Omar pulled her close. Together, like everything else. They returned to bed, but the easy joy had dimmed. Outside, the African night was dark and full of unseen things. Inside, 2 people who'd survived violence began to worry about surviving politics, because sometimes the most dangerous battles weren't fought with weapons. Sometimes they were fought with words and expectations and the impossible choice between love and duty. And neither Isabel nor Omar knew which one they'd have to sacrifice. Yet, the palace was a monument to wealth and power, white marble and gold filigree, fountains that could have funded a year of medical supplies, rooms larger than entire villages Isabel had worked in. She hated it on sight. Breathe, Omar murmured, his hand at the small of her back as they walked through corridors lined with centuries of portraits. They're just people. People who can end your funding with a word. People who think I'm not good enough for you. People who are wrong. He stopped, turning her to face him. In his formal attire, traditional white thobe with gold threading, a ceremonial dagger at his waist, he looked every inch the prince she sometimes forgot he was. Isabel, look at me. She met those dark, devastating eyes. No matter what happens tonight, he said fiercely, you're mine, my choice, my future. If they can't accept that, I'll walk away from all of this without a second thought. You can't walk away from your family. Watch me. His smile was sharp. I've already walked away from revenge. Family is easy in comparison. Before she could respond, massive doors opened ahead of them. A servant bowed. His Majesty is ready to receive you. Omar's hand tightened on hers. Together, they walked into the throne room. King Rashid al-Faisal sat on a throne that had witnessed 5 centuries of rule. He was in his 60s, his beard gray, his eyes sharp with intelligence and something else, something that looked almost like approval as he watched his son approach. Beside him sat Omar's sister, Princess Amira, beautiful and calculating in emerald silk. And scattered throughout the room were advisors, officials, family members, all watching Isabel like she was a curiosity, a problem to be solved. Omar bowed, the movement fluid and practiced. Isabel followed his lead, grateful for the etiquette lessons they'd crammed into 2 weeks. Father, Omar's voice was respectful but not subservient. May I present Dr. Isabel Cross, my fiancée? The king's gaze fixed on Isabel, and she felt the weight of his assessment. Not hostile, but thorough, the look of a man who'd ruled for 40 years and knew how to read people. Dr. Cross. His English was impeccable, Oxford-educated and precisely articulated. Welcome. My son speaks highly of your work. Your Majesty. Isabel kept her voice steady. Omar speaks highly of your wisdom. I'm honored to meet you. A slight smile. Diplomatic. Good. Omar has never brought anyone to meet us before. You must be special indeed. She is. Omar's voice held quiet certainty. She's the reason I'm standing here at all. The reason I stopped destroying myself and started building something worthwhile. Princess Amira leaned forward, her expression unreadable. How romantic. Tell me, Dr. Cross, are you aware of the complications involved in marrying into our family? The expectations, the scrutiny, the sacrifices required? The question was a test. Isabel recognized the challenge beneath the polite words. I'm aware, she said carefully, that Omar and I have already survived kidnapping, assassination attempts, and his rather intense family investigation into my background. I imagine palace politics will seem tame in comparison. Surprised laughter rippled through the room. Even the king's lips twitched. She has spirit, Amira observed, her tone warming slightly. I approve. Father? The king stood, descending from his throne with measured grace. He approached Isabel, studying her face with an intensity that reminded her painfully of Omar. My son was lost for many years, he said quietly, for her ears alone. Consumed by rage I couldn't reach, driven by grief I couldn't heal. I thought I'd lost him forever to violence and vengeance. He paused. Then his reports changed. Suddenly he was building instead of destroying, saving lives instead of taking them, and when I investigated why, I found you. Isabel's throat tightened. Your Majesty, you gave me back my son, Dr. Cross. For that alone, you have my blessing. He raised his voice, addressing the room. This union has my full support. Let it be known that Dr. Isabel Cross is welcomed into this family with all the rights and protections that entails. Omar's hand found hers, squeezing hard. But Isabel saw the shadow cross Amira's face, saw the way certain advisors exchanged glances. The king's approval wasn't universal. There were people in this room who saw her as a threat, an outsider, a problem. The formal dinner that followed was excruciating. 3 hours of multiple courses, careful conversation, and constant performance. Isabel sat beside Omar, answering questions about her work, her background, her intentions. She was charming when required, serious when appropriate, always aware of eyes tracking her every move. Halfway through dessert, Amira leaned across the table. Dr. Cross, might I steal you for a moment, woman to woman? It wasn't really a question. Isabel followed the princess to a private terrace overlooking palace gardens. Amira lit a cigarette, somehow making even that look regal, and studied Isabel through the smoke. You love him, she observed. That much is obvious. But do you understand what loving him means, what you're asking him to give up? I'm not asking him to give up anything. Aren't you? Amira's smile was sharp. My brother could still have a role in this kingdom. My father is grooming him to lead our humanitarian initiatives internationally, to be the face of our modernization efforts. It's important work, work that requires a certain presentation. And you think I don't fit at that presentation? I think you're brilliant and brave and exactly what Omar needed to heal. But healing and thriving are different things. She took a long drag. If you truly love him, you'll ask yourself whether you're helping him build a future or holding him back from his full potential. The words hit it like a blade between the ribs, precise, calculated, devastating. His potential according to whom? Isabel kept her voice level. You? Your father? Or Omar himself? According to the thousands of people who could benefit from his work if he wasn't constantly worried about protecting you, managing your trauma, compensating for your limitations. My limitations? Your past, Amira's tone gentled, became almost sympathetic. Seattle isn't forgotten, Dr. Cross. There are powerful people who remember that lawsuit, who question your judgment. If Omar is going to represent this family on the world stage, his partner needs to be beyond reproach. You're complicated. Isabel felt the old guilt surge, the familiar voice that said she wasn't good enough, hadn't earned forgiveness, didn't deserve happiness. But she'd spent 2 years in the hardest places on earth, had saved hundreds of lives, had helped Omar transform from a weapon into a healer. She'd earned her redemption through sweat and blood and refusing to give up. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm complicated. I made mistakes that cost lives, and I'll carry that forever. But those mistakes also made me into someone who doesn't waste second chances, someone who understands that healing isn't about perfection, it's about showing up every day and doing the work anyway." She stepped closer, meeting Amira's eyes. "Omar didn't fall in love with me despite my complications. He fell in love with me because of them. Because I understand his darkness. Because I've walked through fire too and came out the other side still believing in goodness. So if you're trying to convince me I'm not worthy of him, you're wasting your time. I already know my worth. The question is whether you know your brother's." Amira stared at her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Genuine this time, not the calculated expression from dinner. "Good," she said simply. "I needed to know you'd fight for him, that you wouldn't crumble under pressure or run when things get difficult. Royal life is brutal, Dr. Cross. If you can handle my interrogation, you can handle anything the press or the court throws at you." That was a test? Everything is a test when you're joining this family. Amira stubbed out her cigarette. "But you passed. Welcome to the nightmare, sister." The formal reception after dinner was endless. Handshakes, photographs, diplomatic conversations that went nowhere. Omar stayed close, a constant presence at her side, until finally, mercifully, they were released. Their suite was in the palace's guest wing, opulent, sterile, nothing like the warm spaces they'd created together in Santorini or Uganda. Isabel kicked off her heels the moment the door closed, groaning with relief. "Survived your first royal event," Omar observed, loosening his collar. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been through surgery without anesthesia." She collapsed onto the bed. "Your sister is terrifying. She likes you. If she didn't, you'd know. She called this a nightmare." "She's not wrong." Omar joined her on the bed, pulling her close. "But you were magnificent tonight. Charming when needed, fierce when challenged, absolutely perfect. Your father approves. That's something. My father adores you. Did you see his face when you made that joke about palace politics? I haven't seen him laugh like that in years." He kissed her temple. "You're good for all of us, apparently, healing the whole broken family." Isabel wanted to relax into his arms, to celebrate their victory. But Amira's words echoed. "Are you helping him build a future or holding him back?" "Omar." She pulled back to look at him. "If I'm keeping you from something important, if being with me limits what you could accomplish—" "Stop." His voice was firm. "I know what my sister said to you on that terrace. Amira means well, but she doesn't understand. You're not limiting me, Isabel. You're the reason I have a future worth building at all." "Who? But what if she's right? What if you could do more good without—" He kissed her deep and consuming, silencing her doubts with his certainty. "Listen to me," he said against her lips. "I spent 20 years as a weapon, efficient, deadly, completely hollow. I could have continued that way, served my country through violence, made my family proud through conquest. But I would have been empty, dead inside, a ghost wearing a prince's face." His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You didn't limit me. You saved me. You showed me that strength isn't just about destruction. It's about building, healing, choosing love even when revenge is easier. Everything good I've done since Syria, I've done because you made me believe I was more than my rage." Tears pricked Isabel's eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared that I'm not enough for this life, that my past will hurt your future, that loving me will cost you things you don't even know you're giving up yet." "Then be scared with me, because I'm terrified too." His voice roughened. "I'm terrified that you'll wake up one day and realize you could have had a normal life, a partner who wasn't damaged, a career without danger, children who don't grow up with security details. I'm terrified that I'm selfish for keeping you in my chaos. Omar. But I keep you anyway, because I love you more than I fear the future. Because you're worth any sacrifice, any complication, any cost. He pressed his forehead to hers. So stop trying to save me from yourself. You are yourself, and myself is exactly who I want. The words broke something open in Isabel's chest, all the fear and doubt and guilt she'd been carrying. She kissed him then, pouring everything into it, gratitude and love and absolute surrender to whatever came next. They made love slowly, reverently, in that sterile palace bedroom, proving to each other that they were real, that their choice was solid, that no amount of politics or pressure could break what they'd built. Afterward, wrapped in expensive sheets that felt nothing like home, Omar spoke into the darkness. Marry me. Not in 2 months or 6 months. Now, tomorrow. Let's make this official before anyone else can try to come between us. Isabel's heart stuttered. You want to get married tomorrow? I want to get married 10 minutes ago, but tomorrow works. He rolled to face her, his expression serious. I'm not asking because of tonight, or my family, or any external pressure. I'm asking because I'm tired of calling you my fiancé when you're already my wife in every way that matters. I want it legal, official, permanent. What about the foundation, the work? We'll keep doing it, as partners, as a team. Nothing changes except your last name, if you want to take mine, and the fact that I get to introduce you as Princess Isabel for the rest of our lives. Time = 0.6s. Princess. She tested the word, found it ridiculous and perfect at once. I'm a surgeon from Seattle who burned 3 people to death. You're a surgeon from Seattle who saved hundreds of lives and pulled a broken prince back from the edge. You're brilliant and brave and mine. Say yes, Isabel. Marry me tomorrow and let's start our forever. She should have been cautious, should have planned, prepared, considered all the implications. Instead, she heard herself laughing, pure, joyful, unburdened. Yes, God, yes. Let's get married tomorrow and scandalize your entire family with how little notice we gave them. Omar's grin was brilliant. My father will be thrilled. He loves spontaneous gestures, says they reveal character. What does this reveal about our character? That we're impulsive, dramatic, and completely insane. He kissed her soundly. Perfect for each other. They were married at sunrise in the palace's private chapel. The king officiated, apparently one of his lesser-known duties. Amira stood as witness, her expression caught between exasperation and approval. A handful of palace staff attended, sworn to secrecy until the official announcement. Isabel wore a simple white dress from the palace boutique. Omar wore traditional formal attire. They held hands and spoke vows that were more promise than poetry. I promise to be your partner in healing, not just patients, but each other. I promise to choose you every day over revenge, duty, and fear. I promise to see your darkness and love you anyway. I promise to see your light and follow you anywhere. When the king pronounced them married, Omar kissed her like they were alone, deep, consuming, a seal in their impossible love story. Princess Isabel Al-Faisal, he murmured against her lips. How does it sound? Terrifying. Perfect. Ours. The official announcement came that afternoon. Prince Omar Al-Faisal had married Dr. Isabel Cross in a private ceremony. The foundation would continue its work, now with the princess as its medical director. Future public appearances would include the new couple representing the kingdom's humanitarian initiatives internationally. The press went wild. Social media exploded. But in their suite, wrapped in each other and the quiet certainty of their choice, Isabel and Omar barely noticed. So this is forever, she said, studying the simple gold band on her finger. They'd do elaborate rings later, but for now, this was enough. This is forever, Omar confirmed. You and me, saving the world one surgery at a time, driving my family crazy, being absolutely insufferable together. I love you. The words came easily now, without fear or hesitation. I love you. He pulled her close, his heart steady against hers. Thank you for saving my life that day in Syria, for seeing past the violence to the man I could become, for choosing this chaos with me. Thank you for coming for me in Yemen, for giving up revenge, for loving me despite Seattle, despite everything. She kissed him softly. We're quite the pair. The best pair, he grinned. Though I should warn you, married life with me involves a lot of medical missions, occasional diplomatic incidents, and my sister's unsolicited advice about everything. Sounds perfect. And children, eventually, if you want them. But Isabel's breath caught. They'd never discussed children, had been too focused on surviving, on building their foundation, on healing their own wounds. Do you want them? She asked carefully. With you? Yes. Little surgeons with your stubbornness and my dramatic flair. Terrifying prospects, really. She laughed, imagining it. A family, a future, something beyond missions and danger and endless work. It seemed impossible and inevitable at once. Someday, she agreed, when we've made the foundation stable, when we've proven we can survive civilian life together. Deal. He settled her against his chest, his hand idly playing with her hair. Though knowing us, our kids will probably stage their first surgery at age 5 and demand we fund a clinic in their treehouse. Sounds about right. They fell into comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in violence and chosen each other in peace. Outside, the world continued, politics and press and endless complications. But inside they had this, partnership, purpose, and love that had survived every attempt to destroy it. Isabel. Omar's voice was soft, almost wondering. I'm happy. Genuinely, completely happy. I didn't think I'd ever feel this again. She turned to look at him, this beautiful, broken, healing man who'd become her everything. Me too, she whispered. Me too. 2 years later. The new trauma center in Nairobi opened on a Tuesday. Isabel stood at the podium, 8 months pregnant and absolutely glowing, addressing the crowd of dignitaries, press, and local officials. Beside her, Omar beamed with pride, the proud husband, the successful philanthropist, the prince who'd traded violence for healing. This center represents hope, Isabella said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. Hope that quality medical care can reach everyone, regardless of wealth or location. Hope that the next generation of surgeons, like our brilliant Dr. Amara, who'll be leading operations here, can save lives without the barriers we faced. Hope that my husband and I can raise our daughter in a world we actively helped make better. Applause erupted. Omar's hand found hers, squeezed gently. They'd named their daughter Layla, after Omar's mother. She was due in 4 weeks, and Isabel had every intention of returning to work 3 months after delivery. They'd already converted part of the Santorini villa into a nursery, hired a nanny who specialized in traveling families, made plans for balancing parenthood with their mission. It wouldn't be easy, but nothing about their love had ever been easy. After the ceremony, as the sun set over Nairobi in shades of orange and gold, Omar pulled Isabel aside. "Remember Syria?" he asked softly. "You, covered in my blood, bombs falling, absolutely magnificent. I remember thinking you were going to die and being furious about it. I remember thinking you were an angel, and then realizing you were something better. Real." He placed his hand on her swollen belly, feeling their daughter kick. "I never imagined this. Family, peace, purpose that doesn't require violence. You gave me all of it. We gave it to each other." Isabel leaned into him, watching their center, their legacy, gleam in the fading light. "We chose healing over revenge, love over anger, each other over everything else. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," she smiled up at him. "The best was getting shot in that convoy, otherwise we never would have met." Omar laughed, pulling her close. "Only you would call getting shot my best decision. Time = 0.6s. Only you would agree with me." They stood together as the African sky transformed from day to night, as their center prepared to save its first lives, as their daughter kicked impatiently against Isabel's ribs. Two people who'd started with blood and violence and somehow built something beautiful. Their story wasn't a fairy tale, too much darkness, too many scars, too much reality. But it was theirs. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.